Wonder how billionaires like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk pay so little in taxes? They keep their wealth in stocks and real estate, letting it grow tax-free, and then they borrow against their assets to fund their lifestyles. There's currently nothing illegal about this, and regular people can do it too, albeit on a much smaller scale. There's been a recent push in Congress to eliminate this strategy by taxing asset appreciation even when there's been no transaction. We're waiting to see if that new tax law gains any traction in Congress.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
It's recently come to my attention that a lot of people are not aware that Elon Musk and a lot of other billionaires don't pay federal income tax in the US at all. So let's talk about how they're able to do that. First things first, the US tax system only taxes salaries and wages. It does not tax you on any sort of loan or non-salaried form of compensation. So what Elon did is he came to the US, he started Tesla, right? And when he was doing that, he was deciding basically as the founder of the company, how much he was going to pay himself. And instead of paying himself a normal salary, which would be taxed, he decided to pay himself $0 in salary, and his salary was exclusively in stock options. Now, owning shares in a company is a non-taxable form of income, so they're not going to tax you on the shares that you own in a company. He then went to the bank and said, hey bank, I would like to take out a loan for $1 million or whatever. And I can do that because I own $5 million worth of stocks in Tesla. So if I default on my loan payment, you can just take my stocks from me. And guess what? The bank is going to give him a loan. And now that he has a loan and all of the cash that is going into his bank account is technically a loan, it's not taxable income. You see what I mean? So when you have millions and millions of dollars and you are kind of using this loophole to avoid paying income taxes, you can very, very quickly accumulate mass amounts of wealth. And Elon Musk is not the only person who does this. Mark Zuckerberg does this, Jeff Bezos does this, whoever the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway does this. A lot of millionaires do this. Hence why people like Bernie Sanders have been advocating for the fact that they should not be able to do this. This should not be a legal thing that billionaires and millionaires are able to do in the United States. And specifically for somebody like Elon Musk, because he doesn't even go here. This dude is South African, he's not American. He came to America and utilized the American market to make his wealth, and then now lives here and is benefiting from all the social services, the protection he gets from police, the infrastructure he uses to get from point A to point B, the health and sanitation services, all these social services, but is not paying into it at all, and is just avoiding taxes and is able to hoard unfathomable amounts of wealth from the rest of the American people. So yeah, the moral of the story is that there's a perception that millionaires and billionaires got there because they're just so much smarter than everyone else and work so much harder, but that's not the case. A lot of them are just privileged Nepo babies. Elon Musk specifically, his family made all their money from I think some sort of mineral mining in Africa where they were utilizing child labor and really unethical business practices, and then that's kind of where he got his trust fund from, and then used that to invest in Tesla. So not that he's not a smart person or doesn't work hard, but compared to the average blue collar worker that's getting up at 5 a.m. and working really, really long days and working hard, millionaires and billionaires don't really work that much harder than us. They just are born into a privileged position and then cheat the system.
You know, I figured out how the rich actually don't pay taxes, and it's not by doing anything illegal, and it's not just using debt. So here's an example. If you make $1 million a year, you let your business make the money. The business pays all your expenses. The business pays your car, your travel, your meals. The business deducts those. You get debt and defer so you don't have to pay taxes. So if you make $1 million of income, you get whatever you can in debt. So it cancels out the income. Then the best way to do it is to get real estate with that money. And there's so many deductions with real estate that you can keep pushing off taxes, keep deferring, so that eventually you find ways to pay no taxes. And that's how the rich avoid paying taxes.
This is a comment on a video I made about the ultra wealthy taking all these steps to avoid paying taxes. And it's a really bad and ignorant take. I mean, for starters, we as taxpayers are actually subsidizing these companies. These are some of the examples of subsidies that are listed by the World Trade Organization that these corporations are receiving. And the assumption is that this fuels the economy, people are spending more, and these companies are earning more, and then they're putting a chunk of that back into the government in the form of taxes. Except these people keep finding loopholes so they can get around that part of it, and they keep the extra money for themselves. And the other thing to consider is they are not earning this money. Like, let's say that someone accumulates $10 billion in wealth over the course of their lifetime. If they work for 40 years, that amounts to $250 million a year. Assuming a 40-hour work week, they are making $120,000 an hour. No one individual creates enough value to be worth $120,000 an hour. So what's happening is the company with all of its employees is creating that value, but the individual at the top is the one keeping the wealth. They're taking more than their fair share relative to what they are paying their employees. And then those employees are paying disproportionately more taxes than those wealthy people. So they're basically working the system every chance they get and keeping the profit for themselves. And while the Republican mantra is that super high tax rates will hurt the economy, there's actually a lot of data that that's not true. Boomers were born into a society that was doing really well with high tax rates. The economy was booming. Now, as tax rates have been driven down, our economy has done worse. I mean, our government might be overspending. They may not be using money in the best way, but history shows us that when we give the government more money in the form of taxes, everyone does better.
One of the best ways to avoid taxes is to die. Deadass serious. Let me explain how. Say I purchased a rental property for $100,000 and I turn around and sell it for $200,000. I would have very roughly, that's why this is not legal advice, I would have very roughly $100,000 in capital gains. If I decided to give my property away to my sister, then she turned around and sold it for $200,000, she would have $100,000 roughly in capital gains. If instead I willed it to her or had a trust or a transfer on death deed or some sort of way of transferring the asset on death, then I bought it for $100,000 and it was worth $200,000 when I died, my sister could turn around and sell the property for $200,000 and have zero in capital gains. Okay, this is how a lot of rich people, we make a lot of plans based on this idea. So for instance, assets that we expect to appreciate a lot, then give it to the next generation and they won't have to pay any capital gains taxes on if they sell it right when you die. Easy peasy. There's another really serious property tax implication that I'll go over in another video.
To the people who think a 70% income tax rate for the ultra wealthy is too high.
Just my 2 cents, I don't think a 70% tax on really high incomes is the worst idea, but it has a few drawbacks and I think there are better ways to tax the rich. A lot of billionaires already for the most part avoid the income tax altogether because their net worth comes from investments. A wealth tax on extremely high net worths is a better way to tax the rich. If you exempted a person's first $50 million, then taxed every dollar of net worth after that by 2%, and every dollar of net worth past $1 billion at 3%, that alone could pay for free college in the United States 2.5 times over. So I'm not philosophically against the 70% income tax, but based on how the way I see wealth works in America, I think these wealth taxes of 2% above 50 million and 3% above $1 billion is a much more efficient way to get that money.
Repeat after me. I don't own anything. Ownership is for poor people. That's what the ultra wealthy understand, that the middle class and the poor people do not. When you have assets, they can be taken. When you have money, it can be taxed. That's why the ultra wealthy don't own anything and they don't take income because they don't want to pay taxes and they don't want to get their stuff taken in a lawsuit. Sure, my trust owns a house. My trust owns a car. My trust has a bank account with millions of dollars in it. My company has millions of dollars, but I don't make any money. I don't have any assets. That is the way of the wealthy.
I finally cracked the code on why when you be getting your bonus money, why it's taxed more. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about some ways that you cannot get taxed on more so that you get more of that bread because it's just not fair. For those who don't know, when you get your bonus from your employer, it's not considered regular wages. It's considered supplementary income. Anything like my company, when they pay you, they put it in your paycheck and not as a separate check. And that be taxing you heavy. Boom. So let's say that you actually getting paid $2,000 every single paycheck on the 15th and 30th. So at an annual rate, that's 48 G's, which means you're going to get taxed at 22% based off of the IRS. But now you got paid a $10,000 bonus because they put it in your paycheck. You're going to get paid 12 G's taxable, but that bumps you up damn near to $300,000 and puts you at 35% tax bracket. So if you don't like those numbers, consider how much you want to put into your 401k.
This comment was left days ago, but I just can't stop thinking about how regular people are pro-capitalist. It's just wild to me. I could honestly see how if you made above a certain amount of money, like 200 grand a year, say, that you, in your mind, you would be like successful, but you're still not making as much as the elites by like a long shot, like a lot of money. Like, and I hear people say all the time, like, oh, well, they worked for their money and they should, you know, they put in a lot of work for their company, so they deserve to keep that money. And it's like, do you really believe that they worked harder than the rest of us? Like, but I digress. Most people don't make 200 grand a year. Most people make less than that. And I'm willing to bet this person makes less than 200 grand a year. And they're sitting there like a proponent for the elite class. Like, how are you okay with being regarded as no more than like a sheep or like a pawn in these elites' minds? They literally believe that we are not capable of being anything else beyond wage slaves. They believe that we are not capable of critical thinking. And then people like you are just proving them right. Like, literally the only difference between capitalism and communism is means of production. The means of production is private. It's owned by private hands in terms of capitalism, which is inherently exploitative. With socialism and communism, the means of production is owned by the workers. What is wrong with that? Other than it hasn't been allowed to exist by capitalism. Capitalism can't have socialism because then they couldn't be as successful. Then they couldn't hoard resources. I don't remember the exact wage wealth disparity, but it's like something like 3 people have more money than the bottom 50% of the population. And that is freaking wild. How can you be a regular person and just be okay with that?
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
So I want to make something super duper duper clear. In 2017, Trump passed these tax cuts called the TCJA, where everybody got a little tax cut, okay? But the wealthy, the amount that they have saved in not paying taxes has been crazy. Well, those tax cuts are set to expire this year in 2025. And what Republicans are trying to do is extend those tax cuts. So let's make it clear. If they expire like they're supposed to expire, like they're supposed to, then that means the government, us, everyday people, will gain $4 trillion in tax revenue, meaning we will get those $4 trillion that the wealthy is supposed to pay in taxes, okay? That will help the deficit, that will help everything if they expire like they're supposed to. If they get extended, if they continue these tax cuts for the wealthy, then they get to keep those $4 trillion. And that means we don't get the $4 trillion, okay? That means us, everyday people, will not get that tax revenue. So all this affects what's going on right now. So as you know, as I mentioned previously, the Republicans are trying to push a budget proposal that increases the debt ceiling by $4.5 trillion, increasing, borrowing $4.5 trillion more. Okay, so if they're saving so much money by cutting all these federal employee salaries and cutting all these programs, then why increase the debt ceiling by $4.5 trillion? If they kept it the same, not increasing the debt ceiling, and they cut all these people in programs, then that would make sense to me, right? That would mean that we're paying off the deficit. It'll go down. But they're increasing it. And they're increasing it because since we're not going to receive that $4 trillion in tax revenue, then they have to cut programs everywhere to cushion for the loss of us not receiving that $4 trillion in tax revenue. So how about this, Republicans? How about this? How about you don't increase the debt ceiling by 4.5 trillion? How about you don't do that? Don't increase it. Wouldn't that make better sense? Wouldn't that make better sense of all this madness that's going on? So all these cuts, it's not to help. It's not to help everyday Americans. It's to help the rich. And then keep in mind, federal employees, that all this madness that's going on, the same thing happened to the former Twitter employees. They also got a fork in the road email. Google it, look it up. They were also forced to email what they've done or what their job is. And then later on, those words that you said or they said in their emails in reply were later on used to scrutinize them and fire them. There were a bunch of lawsuits for people getting fired based on whatever they said, because no matter what, nothing's going to be good enough for them. Because the point is just to fire them so they don't have to pay them. So people won those lawsuits. And also for the people that did not reply to the email, who were fired because they didn't reply to the email, they also filed lawsuits and got compensation. The point is that everything about this is illegal. And federal employees, you have rights. You don't have to be forced to reply to something to not be fired or because you fear being fired. No, you have rights. And I posted the laws in my previous post. If you feel more comfortable, talk to an attorney, talk to your union representatives. But all this that's going on is completely illegal. OPM is not anyone's supervisor. They're just like an HR department, but they're not supervisors. Like I said, everything about this is illegal. And please understand why this is all happening. And don't be afraid. I know this is all scary sometimes, but that's what they want. They want everyone to be in fear. And no, we the people have the power, not them. And didn't they say that Elon doesn't run the Doge department? They just replied to a lawsuit saying that he does not run the Doge department, that he has nothing to do with the Doge department. So how is he the one saying that these emails are going out? It makes no sense. It's all illegal. Okay. So continue to push your representatives, continue to push all your elected officials to put a stop to this budget proposal and tell them that we must not extend the TCJA tax cuts. Any questions, put it down in the comments.
The system favors the rich a lot. There are a lot of tax structures for the rich as well. So if you are rich, you have so many options to avoid paying taxes. So many options.
Anyone else out there losing easily 35% of their income off the top? You flip on the news and they tell you it's all the rich people's fault because the rich people aren't paying their fair share. And like a good American, you decide to go out and support local business, and you stop in a local coffee shop, local bar, and you go to pay your bill and you go to leave a generous gratuity, and there's a sign over the register that says cash tips appreciated. And well, they want you to tip in cash so that way the waitress doesn't have to pay tax on that tip money, but you charged me sales tax on my bill. Does anybody fucking pay tax around here?
This is a myth said a lot by people who are pretending that giving the rich more money actually benefits anyone else but the rich. And it doesn't. Time and time again, if you look at studies of various different economic policies, giving the rich more money doesn't aid the economy. It doesn't aid anyone apart from the rich. And that's because rich people don't use all of that money. They don't funnel it back into the economy. They pile it into savings accounts. Or they spend it on things that only other rich people actually gain or lose from. Things like fine art, for instance, or yachts. Meanwhile, if you give that money to poor people, they plunge it straight back into the economy. They spend it on everyday essentials like food and accommodation and energy bills, clothing or public transport, the things people use in their everyday lives, and the things that also employ other people. So what you end up is a positive feedback loop. If you give poor people more money to afford their everyday essentials, you reduce how much they rely on the government for funding. They don't require as much in benefits. They plunge it straight back into the economy, which keeps more other people employed and also improves the tax situation for the government because all of that spending is taxed. So by increasing minimum incomes, by increasing the amount that's given to poor people, the government finances actually get better as well. Whereas very wealthy people can hire very expensive accountants, which means they never actually get taxed what the government claims they are taxed. They do things like gain most of their income from dividends instead of income tax, and dividends are taxed at about half the rate that their income tax would be. They move their investments offshore, and that means that you're actually pulling money out of the British economy and putting it into the economy of the Bahamas or the US state of Delaware. The money is sucked out of the British economy and moved offshore, where it can't be touched by governments, and it doesn't benefit people here. It doesn't employ people here. It doesn't improve the economy here. It doesn't make jobs here. Everything is done by the wealthy to ensure that their money never benefits anyone but themselves. If you want to improve the economy, you give the poor more money. Time and time again, the more equal the society, the better the economy fares. If you give the poor more money, it both improves the economy and improves the general well-being of the entire population. This is a myth. It's a lie. It's an invention by the wealth to justify their hoarding of cash. They are leeches, parasites on the economy and society. They give nothing back to it. Wise up, start supporting the other people around you.
I've been seeing a lot of rich assholes on TV lately talking about why billionaires and rich people shouldn't be taxed more. And now this has always been a talking point for a lot of, Republicans and conservatives, that we shouldn't tax the wealthy more because how is that fair and blah blah blah, and it's hitting different now than it used to. I want you to know sincerely that those people that are on those shows saying those buzzwords do not give a shit about you. They do not care about you. The reason they're saying those things is because they're playing to your fear. They're playing to your fear about taxes, and they know that the average person does not like paying the amount of taxes that they are paying. And so they are playing to the fact that you don't like that, all while making sure their pockets stay lined and they get to pay $0 in tax. And here's the piece of the puzzle that a lot of the conservatives and a lot of the Republicans and a lot of the elites don't want you to even really acknowledge. And it's that the reason you're paying those high taxes, the reason that you can't afford your groceries, the reason that you can't buy a house, the reason for all the financial hardship in your life is because of those corporations, for multiple different levels and multiple different reasons. Part of it is them not paying their fair share of taxes. All the social programs and all of that kind of stuff, that's not the reason that your taxes are so high. The reason your taxes are so high is because the people like Galen Weston are not paying their fair share. It's coming out of your pocket. You are paying for their tax cuts. You. It's coming out of your pocket. They take your labor. They don't pay their fair share in taxes. They don't pay you enough for your labor in the first place. And they all wrap it in, well, it's not fair that they should have to pay their fair share of taxes. It's not fair that you should take all their money. It's not taking all their money. It's taking what is fair. What is fair for the people who buy from them, the people who work for them. They're stealing from you. So the next time you see one of those rich fucks on TV saying, well, it's not fair that the rich people get taxed, ask yourself, truly, is that the case? Or is this guy just trying to send you a message that he's more important than you? That he is totally fine robbing you of the money that you earned?
Okay guys, here's the deal. Rich people never have to pay taxes. Why? It's called buy, borrow, die. Buy assets, borrow money against those assets, and when they die, pass on those assets at a stepped up basis to their heirs, who once again will not have to pay any taxes on those assets. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So all these efforts to get ultra wealthy people to pay more taxes are in vain. They never have to under the current system. It's called buy, borrow, die.
If we want to eat the rich, if we want to stop the oligarchy, what we have to do is feed the poor, enrich the lives of the poor, make the poor non-existent, because without the poor, the rich they have no one to exploit. So maybe we don't have to turn our anger to, we can turn our anger toward them, but we could channel our energy into helping them. You want to stick it to them, allow their employees to take time off work. Allow their employees to be able to quit. Pool your resources. The people who have overflowing wealth. I don't know a number because it's different for everybody. But if you are not living paycheck to paycheck and just struggling to make ends meet, if you see what you can do, where can you make a difference in the lives of poor people, a tangible difference through organizations, through health insurance groups that we can start, through direct access, like hire us. Our system is whacked out from top to bottom, left to right, and all around. We have to change our system. So in conclusion, in order to best eat the rich, we need to eliminate the poor. Because without the poor, there can be no rich.
There's this really interesting thing that happens when you become rich and famous, and it's essentially called exception making. Hi, I'm Jareen, your favorite media girly. You follow me because I keep you informed. There are countless examples of celebrities and the wealthy who think they're above the law, and it all boils down to entitlement. And this entitlement is completely linked to money and status. Basically, rich and powerful people believe that even if they break the rules and they get caught, they're not going to have to really pay the consequences. And that's because they believe that they can generally buy their way out of trouble. And normally that does work. And because they're rich and famous, they are the exception and they can break the rules. And America's legal system tends to favor the rich and powerful. There were some studies that were done about the Supreme Court ruling, and it found that the conservative judges tend to rule favorably for those who are rich, powerful, especially white-collar workers. And this just creates a cycle of abuse of power.
Ever wondered how business owners and wealthy families pay their family members? Hi, I'm Shannon Terrell, the Mindful Money Attorney. I work with first-generation high earners and professionals who struggle to make their money go as far as their colleagues and who overpay their taxes to create and implement a vision of wealth using the exact same tactics as wealthy one percenters. If this resonates with you, like and follow. Ever wonder how wealthy people pay their family members? So wealthy people will oftentimes hire family to help them do tasks or what have you to support their business. Nothing wrong with that. But understand that ultimately, one of the benefits for them of an increasing minimum wage is it actually makes it easier for them to hire family. Here's why. Ultimately, what they can do is hire their family for less than the minimum wage and put benefits in place that ultimately help them keep things in the family. For example, a small business owner might have a Section 105 health reimbursement arrangement. If it would cost them, for example, $17 an hour to hire someone outside of the family, but they can pay their family member in health benefits for less than what they would pay a third party, they're going to hire the family member. Now, the caveat to this is the family member does have to do legitimate work and it has to be tracked. And in that particular instance for the Section 105 health reimbursement arrangement, they would have to be an employee. But it makes for a great benchmark when the equivalent service has to be paid at a higher rate legally. To learn and understand more strategies like this, click the link in my bio.
The more income you start making, the faster you realize taxes will eat you alive if you don't play it smart. One of the most powerful tools for reducing taxes is the capital gains tax, and this isn't just for billionaires. You can use it too. Everyone can use it. If you hold a stock for over 1 year, you qualify for long-term capital gains. That means you'll only pay 0% to 15% on your profits. If you make under $45,000 a year, that rate's 0% for you, and if you make under $550,000 a year, that rate's 15%. This is typically way lower than your regular income tax, but if you sell the stock before that 1 year mark, your profits get taxed like a normal paycheck. This is your full income tax rate, which is going to be way higher for most people. I'm a fan of both short and long-term investing, but if you're buying solid companies like Apple, Google, or index funds like the SPY and plan to hold those for at least a year, your future self and your tax bill will thank you. If you own multiple shares that you purchased at different dates, make sure you tell your broker which shares you're selling to lock in that long-term rate.
The people who think a 70% income tax rate for the ultra wealthy is too high, I would like to remind you that it was 92% under President Eisenhower, and that was back when only a handful of billionaires existed.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.